Something Fishy, the story of Jack, Pat, and George. Jack operated a successful business supplying the needs of the fishing industry in British Columbia. He had the ability to obtain supplies at a reasonable rate, and he operated a machine shop. Because of BC overfishing, drastic cutbacks had been made to the industry, causing the business to suffer. Jack realized that in order to survive, he needed help. The solution? Hire a sales and marketing manager. Pat was a recent graduate who concentrated in small business entrepreneurship with a specialty in sales and marketing. Additionally, Pat had worked on fishing boats and understood the industry. Jack interviewed Pat. He offered Pat a job, and the offer was accepted. The terms of the employment were that Pat would agree to work for 4 years at a generous and increasingly yearly salary. After a few weeks of working with Jack and getting to know his business, Pat suggested they investigate offshore fleet opportunities. Pat explained that other nations' fishing ships needed to go home or to a long-distance port for supplies and repairs. The future business venture? Offer supplies and minor repairs to these ships. Jack liked the idea, but he didn't know how to start. Pat did, and under Jack's signature, sent a series of letters offering their services to companies operating offshore fleets. They received several serious replies, and after further negotiation by mail, 3 potentials emerged, including a Japanese and Algerian company. The next step was in-person negotiations. Pat was eager to go, but Jack was hesitant. After talking with buddies in the lumber industry, Jack was advised that the Japanese companies were conscious of the people they dealt with and might consider dealing with Pat and upfront. Jack asked around and discovered it might be more serious with the Algerian company. Jack's friends suggested that Pat would be unacceptable to the Algerians because she was female and black. Jack couldn't afford to hire another person to do the negotiations, especially since he realized that the success of the business would require an ongoing relationship between the original negotiator and client. Jack explained to Pat that because of negotiation barriers, she couldn't do that part of her job and he would have to let her go. He provided her 3 months' notice. He asked her to train her replacement. Jack hired Paul, another recent graduate, male and white. Paul did not have the same specialization in small business and sales as Pat, but Jack felt that with Pat's help this could be overcome. Pat grudgingly continued to work until the end of her notice period. Paul successfully negotiated with the companies, agreements were signed, and Jack's business had exclusive rights to do the minor repairs and supply these ships. Jack's only potential rival to his new business venture was George, who also supplied boats. George had faced similar problems with the decline of the fishing industry. Instead of looking at offshore, however, he had turned to recreational fishing. George and Jack had been competitors in the past, and both feared that the other would go after their business. After some conversations, both agreed that there was only enough business in each area for one. They prepared and signed an agreement to that effect. George would not offer services and repairs to commercial boats, and Jack agreed to stay out of the recreational fishing business. Both retained the right to continue to supply and service past customers. They agreed that if either violated, the victim would be entitled to liquidated damages of $500 per day. This agreement seemed like a good idea at the time to George, but soon afterwards the recreational fishing industry took a downturn. Realizing the advantages of the agreement that the Japanese and Algerian companies had with Jack, several other offshore companies came to town and approached George to see if they could make a similar deal. George couldn't pass up the opportunity and made agreements to provide similar services. This did not directly hurt Jack's business because currently he could only handle the requirements of the 3 contracted companies. Nonetheless, Jack felt George was in breach of the agreement. Jack and George had a falling out and threatened to sue. When Pat found out how well Jack's business was doing, she decided to investigate what claims she might have against Jack. In the meantime, George had purchased a luxury fishing boat from another person. George felt that by fixing it up, he could flip the boat for a profit. The boat had previously belonged to a famous painter who had died a few years back. During the renovations, George discovered original works signed by the painter rolled up and hidden on the boat. George took the art to the dealer, who estimated they were worth $40,000 each. The dealer contacted the painter's widow, whose lawyer in turn contacted George and demanded their return. Now that you know the facts, let's explore the case in more detail.